What's going on, guys? Alright, tonight I'm going to be starting on my RTX 4090 unboxing slash review, installation, etc. benchmarking video. We're going to go ahead and get the card installed and compare it with my previous card, which is the RTX 3090 Ti for the Win 3 Ultra from EVGA. That's kind of a sending off to EVGA into the wild blue yonder. Unfortunately, they're not making GPUs anymore, as if you guys have been following the news, you've seen that they've decided to get out of the GPU making business, at least for the time being. Maybe they'll decide to partner up with AMD or Intel at some point, but they said they're done with NVIDIA. So that said, give me a minute here and we'll get started on this new project tonight. We'll go ahead and get it unboxed. We'll get it, have a look at it, kind of compare it with my other card. I'll get it installed and we'll do some benchmarkings. So stick around. Here we go. If you haven't already done so, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Thanks. Okay, so you can see I've brought my my gaming rig upstairs, because what I'm going to be doing is, obviously, as I said, we're going to go ahead and get the 4090 installed, but I'm going to go ahead and have to pull this card, of course, and have some room to work. So I've got my, my desk up here where I usually do this kind of stuff. So I brought this out of the living room back upstairs. We've still got the 3090 Ti installed. I just took it out a minute ago and kind of cleaned the system up a bit to get some of the dust out of it. And I went ahead, I had a 2 terabyte Sabrent rocket drive I've been meaning to throw back in there. I had an SSD that died a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, and I just hadn't gotten around to replacing it, but I really needed the storage, especially for today. If we're going to be doing some benchmarks and stuff, I got to install some games. I got to install the benchmark software back on this thing. I had to make a lot of space for the deepfakes I've been making. Those take a lot of storage. So I got the rocket drive installed, got it dusted out. You can see all the fans are spinning. We got a lot of fans in there. What I'm going to do is, once I do install the new card, I will probably put the all-in-one cooler here in the back somewhere. Physically, like the new 4090s, the air-cooled versions are very, very large, but this one shouldn't be that big because it's water-cooled, and so the card itself, as you can see in the box, physically doesn't look particularly large. Like, in fact, like this box that this came in isn't any bigger than the 3090s that I bought. So I think that the card itself, like, I think the PCB on these probably ends like around this point for the 4090. So it'll be like 2 slots big, that long, and then the rest will be radiator. And it's only a 240mm radiator also, so I should have plenty of room to mount on the back somewhere and use like that as intake. This is intake. Kind of pull it out the top / blow it out the back. That should be sufficient. We got lots of fans blowing from the bottom too to keep everything cool. I've never really had any kind of temperature problems in this system, other than the CPU runs really hot, but it's a 12900K, and when it hits full load, it's like 90, and even with a 360mm rad on it, it's like it doesn't make any difference. I don't know how you can properly cool those without liquid nitrogen, quite frankly. But the setup up here, like I say, I've got the 12900K, we've got 32 gigs of DDR5 G.Skill Trident 5600 megahertz, multiple NVMe drives. I'll go ahead and install everything on the Gen 4 Sabrent rocket that I just put in there. It's about a 7,000 megabytes per second read-write rate. It's extremely fast. It's basically on par with like a Samsung 980 Pro. I also have a 980 Pro in there, but it's pretty much full, so that's why I needed the other drive. And that's also the other drive that died, was a 2 terabyte Gen 4 980 Pro. Luckily, I got a refund for that and was able to just purchase the Sabrent rocket instead. So next thing I'll show here is my desk setup. I've got 2 Samsung Odyssey displays. The one on the right is the new Neo G8. I forget the exact model, but it's the 240 hertz 4K mini LED display. It is pristine. It is gorgeous. I've been meaning to do a review on it, and I'm not like into hardware reviews quite as much as I used to be, which I say as I'm about to do a hardware review. But I have more interest in just making the deepfakes these days. If somebody really wants me to do a review on this monitor, I can kind of go over the features of it and sort of show it off, but you don't really get the benefit of watching it in a YouTube video because you can't see what it looks like really all that well translated to your display. but it's kind of comparable to OLED. I mean, you get super dark blacks. The only thing I would say that I have a problem with on it is like the viewing angles are a little bit lousy because it's a VA panel instead of IPS. So unless you're looking at it dead on, and it is curved, so that's got probably something to do with it too. But if you're not dead on it, like you get kind of a weird dimming out / glowing effect on brighter spots. But anyways, I'm not here to review the monitor. I just thought I'd mention that. This is another Samsung Odyssey. This is a G7. 4K 144, I think, hertz. Yeah, I think it's 4K 144. That is an IPS panel. It's 28 inches, where this is 32. But I've got my workstation hooked up to that down here. That is my, I know there's stuff on the floor, just accept the fact that I'm a slob. Anyways, this is my Threadripper workstation with my RTX A6000. And we'll be using this to do recording of gameplay footage. It's got my AverMedia capture card in it. So what I'll be doing eventually here is I'll be running via HDMI from the the 3090 Ti, then later from the 4090, I will be running HDMI over to the capture card so I can capture footage on this machine. And I'll probably edit the video on that because it's pretty fast for that with the Threadripper. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get some things installed, which I won't bother to bore you guys with. And then we will go ahead and start recording some of those benchmarks. And then when I come back, we'll do the installation of the 4090, after which time I will run benchmarks on that and give some specs and show temperatures and things and give kind of my final thoughts on it. I hope we don't have any problems with it because I really don't want to have to put everything, back in a box and try to wait for Best Buy to give me another one. It took a week to get this. I ordered it last week on the 12th, and I'm just now got it today. It took them that long to get it physically into the store from wherever they got it from. All right. I'll be back here in a minute when I'm ready to start putting in the 4090. Alrighty, I have misplaced my clamp I usually use to hold my phone in place when I do stuff like this. I'm sure I'll find it right after I make the video, but whatever. We're going to go ahead and get this thing unboxed. I've already run through the benchmarks I was going to run on the 3090 Ti, so I can swap this in. Then we'll do some checks on making sure everything's working alright. We'll test the lighting, because it does do a little bit of RGB lighting. Just a little tasteful accent here around the fan, and I think there's some on the back plate as well. But we'll go ahead and get this thing opened up here, which shouldn't be too bad, but might be a little complicated with one hand. So just kind of bear with me here. Like I say, I don't have any idea what I did with that stupid clamp. So it kind of opens like it's a stadium seat or something, which is very interesting. So we've got our big foam, and yeah, this is what I thought. I saw somebody else do an unboxing of the non-Liquid-X version of the Supreme Edition. Comes with a mouse pad, and it's actually a pretty nice mouse pad, which is cool, because the one I've got actually is about ready to go to hell on me. So this is a nice little freebie that they've thrown in. It's got their little logo on it, the Supreme logo. Suprim, I like the spelling of that. So, as I was saying, this card physically is substantially smaller than most 4090s because of the water cooling. Instead of having all giant, a giant air cooler on it, which actually looks like it comes right out of it. That's handy because, as I said, my hands, I'm only working with one of them here. But I mean, it's a pretty tall card. It's definitely still got some weight to it. It feels very sturdy, but it's only 2 slots thick, and the length of the card. Once I pull my 3090 Ti out here in a second, we can compare, but this card is a bit shorter than that one. It's a little longer than I thought it would be. The PCB on it actually goes the full length of this as well, so this is not a standard PCB. Like I'm pretty sure the Founders Edition cards are like down to here or something for length. Could be wrong about that, but I think that's what I saw in some videos I watched. But it does have 3 DisplayPort 1.4s, and you've got an HDMI 2.1 on this, so you can do 4K 120 on each of the DPs, and you can actually do all the way up to 8K 60 with HDMI. So if you have an 8K television set or other kind of display, because they do make some 8K monitors from Dell, if it has HDMI 2.1, you can utilize it using this card. It has also, so I'm just trying to stand this up so we can see, it has the single 16-pin. I believe this can handle up to 600 watts. This is the new ATX 3.0 power connection standard, whereas before we were using things that, usually you had like 2 or 3 PCI Express 8-pin power connections. Now we're doing this singular connection They do make power supplies that have this, but I don't currently have one, and I looked for one and they were all out of stock, so I imagine that the scalpers either bought them up or people who just were trying to get prepared so they too could use one for this for the new cards. It isn't required. It should come with an adapter to convert either 3 or 4. I believe it should be 4. Maybe it depends on the card. We'll see what we get, but it should convert at least 3, if not 4, 8-pin PCI Express power connections to a single 16-pin ATX 3.0 power delivery port. Some of the cards, it's further out, like towards the center. This is at least kind of on the end of the card, which is a little bit less in the way, a little less obtrusive. That's a little bit nicer. I wish they would put it on the end of the card so it would be out of the way. EVGA used to make something called a power link, which was like a bracket that would connect to this and then come out, go around into the side, and give you port access so you could plug them in the back and get them a little bit out of the way. They don't appear to be doing that for us with MSI. That's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's at the end. And once I can get a power supply that has legit native support for this type of connector, you'll just be running one cable to it instead of like 4 to a dongle that then converts them into 1 and looks kind of janky. So when you flip it over here, really a nice looking sturdy card, and this is going to go well with my system because I have an MSI Z690 series chipset motherboard from MSI. I also have an MSI 360mm all-in-one cooler on my processor, the 12900K, and even the case from Phanteks is kind of a silvery gray color. So all this should jive very nicely and look good together. My cat finally came up. He's been snoozing downstairs in the chair for a while. I think that this little emblem here, the Suprim emblem, can be lit up, from what I understand. Now, whether or not you can do a bunch of colors with it, or if it can just do white, I'm not 100% sure yet. I think it can do RGB, which you can control from the MSI Center application. I'm used to using EVGA stuff. This is a little bit of a learning curve for me, just using some of the MSI lighting software that I don't usually screw with. They have like their Mystic Light software, but I think they've kind of gone away from that, and you can kind of just control all their stuff again from within the, it's called MSI Center, Command Center maybe. We'll verify that when I get in, but I'm pretty sure it's just called MSI Center. It does look like it has a little switch to convert between silent and gaming. I'm not sure if that just controls like the pump or if it controls the fans and the pump. I guess we'll see what happens with that. I got to figure out also, usually hybrid cards like this will have somewhere to connect the fans. I'm actually not seeing that jumping out at me on here. So maybe you don't hook the fans to the card. That'd be kind of lame if they didn't have any way to control the fans from the card itself. But maybe it's built in somehow on the radiator, I mean, because there should be 2 fans on the radiator. It's a 240mm radiator for this card. There should be, you know, pretty clearly some way to plug those into the card so it can be controlled from some kind of a power delivery system on here. Not seeing that. So give me a second here. I'm going to get everything out of the box. Like I said, I'm working with one hand and the phone. So I'm just going to pull this stuff out. We'll see what else came with it. Give me one sec. Alrighty, so I have the card out. You can see the inside of it is all copper too on these. This isn't like aluminum or something, or at least a good chunk of it's copper, which is really nice. And something kind of nice, I did find where it's connected. There's actually, you can see, they've somehow routed the power connectors for this. Let me see here. So here's on the side, you've got the 2 fans, as I said, and the power connectors run up here and go inside the tube somehow. So there's very little clutter that way. It's apparently routed probably into the board somewhere, and again connects in somewhere with the tube inside, and you just don't see it. So there's no reason to control anything, which is pretty neat. It does have some little Velcro, you know, like cable management ties here for you to try to make it a little bit cleaner, but really it's pretty clean in and of itself. Like I say, if you don't have to worry about routing those cables anywhere, or like connecting them to the back of the card or connecting them to the motherboard or something, then it's pretty much handled itself, and there's very little cable management to be done. That's nice. It does include, as I said, a 4-way 8 PCI Express to single 16-pin adapter cable. So this will require, is this 16-pin? It's 12. See, I thought it was freaking 12. Somebody was saying 16, and I've just been going by what people said, but it's 12 pins. It's a 12-pin connector, but it still does 600 watts. And I think you can do, what is it, 75 over the PCI Express bus. I should probably verify that, but anyways, at least 600 watts over this. And you have a little installation guide, which we really shouldn't need. This isn't particularly complicated. You literally install the card and mount the radiator somewhere, and you're pretty much off to the races. It does come with a couple screws and washers to connect your radiator to your case wherever it is that you plan to install that at. And that was all that came in the box. There's really not a ton of frills other than, like I say, the nice free mouse pad, which I'm always cool with. And like I say, we just got the dongle to convert quote-unquote legacy non-ATX 3.0 power supplies to be able to use this card. And as soon as I can get, I don't know, I'll get around to it, I should say, because they're kind of expensive, and the one I'm using in here is already 1500 watts. It's not like I really need a different supply, but eventually I will swap out for a 3.0 compliant supply to get down to just using one single cable to run to the GPU instead of 4. That'll be a little less clutter once again in the case, a little bit less bloat. So, with that said, I've pulled the little plastic off there. Let's pull the plastic off of our fans. These are some pretty nice looking fans here. Fancy. And these are similar to the ones that I've got on my CPU cooler, because once again, that's a pretty modern edition, also from MSI, which matches up pretty nicely with this. I'll show you guys here in a minute, once I get this physically installed in the case, kind of how well everything's going to match together and look kind of like it was all designed to work together by the same company, because it was. So give me a minute here. I'm going to go ahead and pull the 3090 Ti. We can kind of compare those real quick, just physically. And then I will go ahead and get this installed, which should only take me a minute, and we can start playing with it. So give me one moment. Alrighty, so here on the left we've got our 3090 Ti EVGA for the Win 3 Ultra versus the new MSI 4090 Suprim Liquid-X with our 240mm radiator over here. You can see how thick this card was. It's about 3.5 to 3 3/4 slots deep, versus the 2 slots of the MSI Supreme, but only again because of the water cooling. Otherwise, I think the Suprim X non-liquid cooled version is about the same, if not a little bit thicker than this. And again, it's probably, I don't know, a couple inches longer. These are actually about the same length, really. A second, like this is just very negligible difference. Interesting. I thought it'd be physically quite a bit bigger. So like I said, the 4090s are just that much bigger than the 3090 Ti's were. And I remember thinking how freaking ridiculous this thing was. If you don't have a pretty monster case, you can't fit cards like this in them, let alone, like I said, the new 4090s are substantially longer than that. And this is a Phanteks, I think this is the 719. I've got a couple of cases from them. I'm starting to blur in my head which model is which, but they're very comparable when it comes to spaciousness. And I mean, this one's going to fit up here. I'm going to have all this extra space yet, but a regular case, like you'd almost be bumping into the front of it with, like a mid tower. This is a SuperTower. This is larger than even a full tower, and you need pretty good amount of room for things like this. But as I was mentioning, 1 second here. So I've got the 3 8-pin, 2 12-pin ATX 3.0 connector for the 3090 Ti. 4-way for the 4090, and I do have I had these extensions on the 3 that were in there, but it was really making a bunch of clutter back here in this housing area here, so I just went ahead and removed those extensions. I don't think I have a 4th one anyway, and since I had to add in another one of these cables, at least this way they'll match, even though they look kind of like, well, they don't look that great, we'll say. But so I've got to hook all 4 of those to this adapter, which will then connect into our new card, and that should supply it the power it needs to give it its full performance. So give me a moment here. I'm going to go ahead and physically install the 4090. I'll be doing that off camera because, like I said, I cannot figure out what the heck I did with my clamp to hold my phone, but that's alright. I think most people have seen video cards installed anyway. I'm going to put the radiator, like I say, in this ballpark. I don't know that I can take the fan. I mean, you can take the fans off. Maybe I'll just have them blowing out the back, because this is pulling in air, this is pulling in air. It's probably fine to use that as exhaust just as much as it is. I think that's actually how I've had it. I've got my 3090 Kingpin downstairs still, which eventually I will be swapping out for this card. So I'm not getting rid of this. I'm going to swap that in for the Kingpin and either retire the Kingpin or find some other use for it. But Probably can't sell it for anywhere near what I paid for it, so I'm not really sure what my plan is yet. The GPU market's been very strange, as you guys all probably well know. So give me 1 second, I will get the 4090 in here, we will make sure it fires up, we will play with it. Give me just a moment. Alrighty, so after a little wiggling and jiggling here, we've got our radiators mounted back here, so we'll pull in air and it'll kind of be blowing out, but we got cool air coming up from the bottom. It can blow out the top, it can blow out the back, so I think we've got more than enough cooling going on. So the card is connected to our 4 adapted 8-pin PCI Express power connections, as I stated, into a 12-pin 600-watt ATX 3.0 connector. So, next thing to do is to hook it up to a display and a power source and see if it explodes. And or start spraying water all over the place. Let's find out. Be right back. Well, alrighty, it's wired up. Let's see if it, you know, does the right thing. Oh, hello. Alright, so the word Supreme lights up. Well, that's kind of blocked by our tubes a little bit, but you can see it. And the lighting on the back, the Supreme emblem does light up, which is good. And we're about to see if we're going to get any kind of a display momentarily here. But the fan's kicked on, which is good. I don't know if my monitor is still on or not. I forget if I left it on. Yeah, it's on. It's routed though through the capture card, so there may be a moment here. I might actually have to plug directly into the display and verify it's getting a driver and doing anything. But it should be working here. Give me just a minute. I'll be right back once I verify everything's working. Alrighty, so we're up and running. It does work. And the lights, like I say, work on the side of the card and on the back of the card. And you can synchronize it with your motherboard using MSI Mystic Light and what they call MSI Center. And you can see me in my CPU block housing thing. But, so yeah, like I said, we got MSI Mystic Light and my core liquid tied into what's just called MSI Center. I thought it was called something else, but anyways, you can either synchronize your board and your GPU, or you can separately control them. But you can go in here and change to different, okay, I guess you can do like a color sequence, but you probably got to pick which colors you want. Flashing, try applying that, and we'll see what that does. But basically, it takes it a second. This comes on and off. I mean, if you've played with GPU and motherboard RGB software once, you've played with it a million times, so nothing really over the top there, but it does seem to work. I'm just going to put it back on steady. I kind of just tend to like to leave it all one thing, either off or just like white light or something. So anyways, I can control that through there. Hardware monitoring. The clock on this thing idles at like 2625 megahertz. That's pretty nuts. So I've got my I'm sorry I'm using my phone for this, but because I'm running this through my capture card, it's kind of complicated to set up everything for capture and then trying to figure out which machine needs to use the microphone and combining audio later. I'm just going to record it with the phone because it's easier. So hopefully you guys are alright with that. If not, so sorry. So you can see we've got 16,384 CUDA cores compared to previously on the 3090 Ti it was around 10,500. I think it was like 10,700 some odd cores on the 3090 Ti. The regular 3090 was like 10,500. So a substantial gain in the CUDA core market. We still are using GDDR6X instead of, like, they haven't gone on to like a GDDR7 yet. So the memory is still the same type that the last two, the 3090 and the 3090 Ti used. I'm sure it's at a higher clock speed, but like I say, it's substantially, there's not a huge difference probably in the memory bandwidth. It's still 384-bit. I'll find out and try to do a comparison of like the memory speed on the 3090 Ti versus the 4090 here, but I don't think there's probably a substantial difference. It's the same type, same bus width, other than running at a higher frequency because these things use so much power. I can't imagine it being a massive difference. So I'm running the fans. I'm using MSI Afterburner to control the fans. If you guys aren't familiar with MSI Afterburner, it's free software. You can download it. You can use it to control fan speeds, change the clocks. You can use, they have what they call Riva Tuner, which you can install with it, that lets you do more advanced stuff like showing frame rates and things like that, and temperatures in game overlay. I have a different game overlay that I use called FPS overlay, so I'm not going to screw with that, but it does let you control the fan speeds from in here. So I've got it at 67% fan speed, which equates to about 1900. I don't know, one of them runs a little faster than the other one for some reason, but maybe one of them's the pump and one of them's actually the fans. It's kind of hard to tell because the way that those things are laced into it, as we saw, the fans are tied into like a line that's going inside one of those tube braids and connects onto the GPU. So it's kind of hard to say if like one of this is the pump RPMs and one is another fan, or if they're just running the fans for some reason at slightly different speeds, but pretty comparable. So I want to see what power draw we start seeing on this. Let me find that real quick. Power draw, I think, well, it's using like 1% right now, so that's not going to tell us anything until we run that, I guess, and verify. I'm going to go ahead and minimize some stuff. I'm going to run some benchmarks, and we'll see how much power this thing uses under load. I suspect the answer to that question is a lot. So give me a minute here, and I'll run some tests on this, and then we'll compare the 3090 Ti tests to the 4090 tests. I'm kind of curious to see how the temperatures do as well, because the temperature on that 3090 Ti actually doesn't even get to like 60 degrees. The air coolers on those are extremely aggressive, but that's because they're freaking huge. So let's see what the all-in-one cooler can do as opposed to the air cooler. So stand by. Alright, so this is a Deepface lab test because I know people want me to test that as well in terms of performance on how well this can, how much faster this is. I feel like, okay, excuse me, the speed on the right here, I'm kind of like doing a double capture, so I'm piping like the image over from the one machine and then running OBS on my workstation here to capture this display also, so I can do both at the same time. Now this one is not exactly accurate now because a second ago before I started recording, this was quite a bit faster. It was like 10,050, or sorry, not 10,000, 1,050. But they're both running at the same settings. Other than this one actually has a slightly higher GAN patch size, but they're both 320 resolution head model. Well, this is head, this is whole face, but that doesn't change anything in terms of how fast they train. It's just about the resolution and the settings. So they're all using the same, like I say, resolution. They're using the same settings. Otherwise, they're both batch 16. But this one is running on the RTX A6000, which I know this isn't like a 3090 Ti comparison. I forgot to do that before I took it out of the machine. So this is a fairly close comparison. So this, because I'm recording and doing this at the same time, it's using system resources. That is why this is getting a slower speed than it should be. Normally it's getting, like I said, a little over 1,000, like 1,050, maybe 1,100 when it's kind of hits a slow point. But you can see over here the speed on the 4090 is like 735, 733 milliseconds per iteration. So a pretty substantial marked improvement, despite the fact that it's you know, it's the same amount of VRAM, everything else being the, well, actually, never mind, this is more, but this is about the same speed that a 3090 would train at. A 3090 Ti would be slightly faster, but with GAN, it's still like 950, 975 milliseconds per iteration, whereas you can see this is, you know, running with GAN, everything else being the same, and being at least a couple hundred, maybe close to 300 milliseconds faster. And this is still early in the game. When they release, you know, new CUDA libraries and CUDA neural net library files to replace the existing ones that have been used from the, like, for quite a while with the RTX 3000 series. This is still the same version of Deepface Lab. Like, there hasn't been an update to it yet because, again, the card's just launched, and I imagine there's some slightly newer CUDA and CUDA, for lack of a better way to pronounce it, libraries that once those are available and can be overwritten into the internal Python folder within Deepface Lab, there'll probably be some more improved performance here. It'd be really cool to get this on like 600 or something like that. That's really quite fast though on a 320 resolution. I bet you could burn through like a 224 with this, and even like 448 you could probably train pretty quick. I need to try like my high dimensions 352 res model to see how well that trains on this for speed, because I'd like to kind of start using that one more for more models because it's pretty good. But anyways, I wanted to do that test to show how this goes, and then I want to show you guys Deepface Live performance real quick, because it is also quite a bit more improved than what it used to be. Now, just for an example, well, I'll go ahead and load it up here and we'll talk about it. Give me one sec. Alright, this is the same King Arthur one we were just looking at. I exported it earlier, but it's obviously not ready yet. It's just a test to see kind of like how the crown would stay working. From an angle, it doesn't work so good. Hold on, let me see if I can fiddle with this and get it to look a little bit better. Yeah, it's not too bad. Like I say, when it gets done training, hopefully this problem with like the weird side BS goes away. I don't know. But this was mostly just to play around and see if I could get a model with a piece of headgear instead of hair to work. And I mean, it works. It's from an old movie. There's not that much footage of him, so it's kind of hard to get enough to really keep it going. But just as you can see, the frame rate here is like 37 frames a second. It's camera resolution set to 720p, and again, this is a 320 resolution head model of Arthur from the Holy Grail, and that's still getting an excellent frame rate. Before, I was getting like 23, maybe 24. Sometimes maybe closer to 27 with the 320 res, but just not amazing, you know. Let me switch to this real quick. That's Patrick Stewart again. Oh, hold on, this is... got settings to change here. and that's looking pretty sharp. This is again the same resolution, same rough frame rate, around 36 it's getting. Just screw around with some of this here a little bit. And partly that's because I have like the erosion and blur settings completely shut off. You don't really need those for head models, which is kind of nice. I'll try. Whatever. But I did this one in the live stream the other day, so it's not like you haven't. Some of you guys haven't seen it already, but you get the general idea. This is running quite a bit higher frame rate than I was getting before. And I'll even show you guys this one here. So it can handle 512 res models. Let me crank this up. Which just means it could have handled it anyway. Like the 3090 or 3090 Ti could have handled it too in terms of at least having enough VRAM. It's still doing this box that keeps appearing around your freaking head. I don't know what's causing that. Kind of annoying. I don't know if I can do anything about that, or if it's just something to do with the way I train the model. Like maybe it needs to be trained against like me directly and it might work better. But this is a 512 resolution, still getting 23 frames a second, which is right about the frame rate that video should run at anyway. If you're used to watching movies, they are at 24 frames a second, sometimes 30. So this is you know, looking pretty sharp, and actually at a usable frame rate, which unlike before, this was getting like 17 or 18. I'm surprised it even works because I didn't think 512 res would even work for a live model. But you guys can see anyway, consistently the performance has improved across the board in deepfake application, which is nice. You know, the temperatures are staying good in that card. They're like between mid 40 to 50 range. I haven't seen it go above that, and it really isn't using the kind of power that I thought it would use either. I'm pretty sure it's getting all the power it should be getting. I mean, if you see like the clock speeds, it's getting up to like 28, like 40 megahertz on boost, and yet like I've checked the power usage in GPU-Z and it's getting maybe to 400 watts tops. I don't know. I'm not sure why it's not going higher than that. I don't know if there's some limiter somewhere, or maybe one of the four ones of those connector pins from the power supply to that 12-pin ATX 3.0 connector might not be quite right. I don't know. That said, I think this is kind of where I'm going to call the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it was informative. For those of you who are part of the deepfake community, like as you can see, you can do a lot with one of these cards in terms of performance for Deepface Live and so forth. I don't know if I have a 224 res model on here. I'm going to load up Christian Bale, even though he's still another 320, but hold on a sec here. Now see, I got to go through and erode this down a little bit, and that will hit the frame rate a little bit when you start eroding and blurring. I think that's partly why the head models do so well now, because they don't need that. It's just the full head. There's nothing to erode. You're not blending it. It's just covering the whole head. And so because you don't have to enable that, you don't lose any frame rate. But you can see very smooth. You know, Bale turned out pretty good anyway. This is one of my better models, so pretty happy with this one. But it looks better on this than it does when you stream it through YouTube, because YouTube compresses the hell out of everything. So I don't know how this will turn out. Actually, now that I think about it, when I upload it, it'll still get compressed. But pretty happy with the way things are going. Pretty impressed with the hardware all around. If you guys have questions, of course, ask them in the comments section. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. If you have requests for deepfakes, leave them in the comments section. If you have requests for things for me to benchmark with the 4090, also leave those requests in the comments section. If it's a game and I can get it for cheap, you know, or if you can point me to where I can get it for free without, you know, piracy, but like, you know, if it's you know, just a free offer, or like low, like $10 or something, I don't mind doing that. It's when they're, you know, I'm not buying like $50 games to run a benchmark, because I really don't play games as much as I used to. I'm not paying $50 for a game that I don't intend to really play. So again, appreciate everybody watching the video. Hope this has been informative, and I'll talk to you guys again in the near future. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.